All right. Welcome, everybody, to whatever episode of the solo episode this is. I didn't look it up before. I probably should have. And also, this one's a little bit impromptu. I have no real idea what I'm going to talk about on this one, which is new. Usually I plan it out a bit. Usually I wait until I have, a certain amount of ideas kicking around in my head that I know I want to talk about or get off my chest, and then I hop on one of these. But had it in my head that I had all these podcasts planned because I've, put a little bit of work in, and I should hopefully have three or four this week that I get to record with some awesome guests. I'm really excited for it. But in my head, I didn't really realize I only had one booked before tomorrow. It's Sunday. I'm recording this. Monday's usually when I release an episode, and I realized I only booked one episode on the Saturday, and then all the other ones were after. And I didn't have any in the can sitting there, but I thought, oh, whatever. I record the one on Saturday. I'll turn it around quick and I'll put it out on Monday. But then last minute, something came up. It got canceled. We'll reschedule it, and I kind of got left with no episode for Monday. And I did a little bit of a freak out because I don't want to miss a week. I don't want to leave you guys hanging. So I thought I have enough to talk about. I can hop onto it, and I figured I just see where I can go, see if I can fill up an hour, 2 hours, see what happens once we get rolling here, and just see what I can fill up and kind of make it half-ass interesting enough that I don't bore you guys all to death and make you turn it off. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure. Could crash and burn. Could be wonderful. We'll find out. So my week, not even sure when I talked to you guys last, what I updated you guys on, but who knows? I'll just start with Monday. So Monday was a big day. Had my dog Ahsoka. She was getting fixed, and all the weekend before it, I was just struggling with it because I realized, I don't want to have blood all over my house, twice a year with dog periods. I know that's going to sound harsh to some people, but you know what? That's probably the biggest reason. And B, I didn't want to always have to worry about her getting pregnant when she's hanging out with, male dogs, getting around. You know how she is. If you guys have met her, no, I'm just kidding. But, those are like the two biggest things. But so those are kind of the pros on the side of getting her fixed, right? And the cons, it's not natural. Their hormones get all change and stuff. And somebody, in my one of my friends gave me this little caveat to add to it because he knew I was conflicted, is that apparently the risk of cancer can go down without having some of those hormones that are always running through their body. So that made me feel a little bit better. But you risk the attitude change. Your dog can never be the same. There's a lot to it. And for me, all the things on the pro side were all selfish. Those weren't things that were going to help the dog. They were things that were going to be nice for me. And for that reason, I really struggled with it. And it just felt like, man, I'm just being lazy because I don't want to have a little bit of blood, or I don't want to worry about her getting pregnant and have to watch her like I would. And that is purely for me. And on the other side, all the cons of it and all the risks and everything is all put on this dog. And for some reason, I really struggled with that. I don't love that. I still don't. And everything went fine. She's fine. I can't tell you guys what a tank this dog is. Like, when we got her and we were all careful with her, she'd fall over. She'd be playing with toys. She'd smack her head on things. I think I've heard this dog yelp maybe twice in 1 year. She just turned a year yesterday. That's another big thing on my agenda this week, was my dog's birthday. But she's just so strong. Like, just never seems to be bothered by nothing, never seems to be hurt. You can kind of kick her, run over her, and she'll run over herself and just nothing. Just, wags her tail, does that big, dumb, goofy smile she has. But anyways, I was really worried about it. I was conflicted. So going into it, and then the other part of it is tough is, I'm sharing this dog still with my ex, and, coordinating that's painful. I really do not enjoy that. It just brings up, I'm trying so hard to, get over these feelings, just kind of throws it in your face a lot more often than you'd want. So that was, another added wrinkle to the whole thing. But mainly I was just worried about my dog. But everything went well on Monday. got her out and she was so cute. She had her freaking cone on. So we'd roll up to the vet after the procedure and they say like, yeah, she's already got the cone off 3 times. Like, yeah, no, that sounds like her. And so he said we got her collar wrapped around through it to hold it on and we tightened it up really tight. We don't think she's going to get it off. And she was so fucked up on anesthesia. Oh my God. You could just see her when you just let her stand. There's a little bit of a wobble to her. You could tell she wasn't too steady, a little bit confused, but doing fine. Nothing wrong. They gave us some, oh, and that morning I'd given her for the first time, we'd never really given her any medicine of any kind, gave her anti-anxiety pill that morning. Well, her appointment was between 8 and 9, so I got up at 7, gave her, her first piece of cheese, which I think she loved, to put a little bit of a, anti-anxiety pill and some cream cheese, gave it to her. She was happy camper. And I think that chilled her out a little bit. Went through, had the anesthesia, then she was really fucked up, brought her home and, my mom ended up staying in Edmonton to help me with the dog. And just, my mom loves this dog. And the dog loves her. When my mom's in town, Soka just follows her around and is always getting all this cuddles and all this love. I'm a bit busier and I get distracted. So I cuddle the hell out of this dog all the time. But I think growing up as a puppy, getting cuddled literally 24/7, she expects that. And if there's nobody paying attention to her, nobody cuddling her, nobody, giving her some pets, she gets a little miffed. So when grandma's around, it's awesome. She loves it. So we just kind of, had her with her stupid little cone on and gave her lots of pets. And as she was kind of coming a little bit out of the anesthesia, getting a little bit more active, she hated this cone, like was always pulling on it, trying to get it off. It was just miserable. She went and sat like that night when I was trying to go to bed. She's just all over the bed, flip-flopping around. She just went and sat. Oh, I think I hear her barking. I don't know what she's barking at. Went and sat in the corner of my room, just with her cone on, just looking at the ground, just depressed, like just so sad. And I felt so bad for this stupid little dog. And got through that night. So immediately the next morning I was like, okay, this cone is not going to work. I went to the pet store and got one of those inflatable donuts, which looks hilarious. And she hated it a little bit less, still wasn't super pumped about it. But that's the thing. We woke up the next morning after that anesthesia wore off. I kind of figured she'd be in pain, maybe a little bit ginger. No, right back to psycho herself. Like just as soon as I opened the door to try and let her outside, she's out there, trying to run around, but her stupid cone is now scooping snow and she's getting caught. And I'm so worried about her stitches. I don't know, how careful you have to be with these dogs when I've never, been in charge of a dog when they've gotten fixed. I'm sure I had dogs growing up, but that was never really my responsibility at the age I was at, to watch them. So I didn't really know, how crazy it'd be. And I was just worried about her and brought her upstairs and she got to see, the rest of the family, my mom and everything. She's just ripping around, jumping up and down off the couch. And I'm like, oh my God, you're going to bust a stitch, you crazy dog. So ended up giving her another anti-anxiety pill there just to kind of calm her down and just hopefully get her to chill out a bit so she didn't rip a stitch or whatever, just kind of to let it set. And like I said, didn't seem like she was in any pain at all. Didn't seem like she even realized she just had surgery the day before. Absolute unit of a dog. But they also gave me 3 syringes of pain medication for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Give it to him at 11 each morning. Gave it to her the first day, even though it didn't seem to be in pain. I just thought, how do I know? Maybe she is in pain and I just don't know it and she's pushing through or just doesn't show it. So gave her that. Had a good day with her, fighting back and forth of putting this donut on and off her head. And she was pretty good. She didn't really lick at her stitches all that much, even without the cone on. She's been really good with that. I think just the couple times we caught her trying to, just gave her shit and showed her, okay, you licked, you get the donut on. So she kind of put it together. Oh man, if I lick, but this is the thing. She knew she could get the donut off quite easily. She just put her paws behind, she could pop this thing off, but she knew she'd get in trouble for it. So it was kind of this constant battle of her just kind of looking at me, giving me the look like, how mad are you going to be if I take this donut off right now? You look kind of distracted, and then she'd pop it off and I have to run over there. Hey, put this back on her. If she was going to be right in front of me where I was watching her, I knew she couldn't lick, I would let her take it off and just kind of keep an eye on her. And then, like I said, if I saw her lift her leg to go lick, I just, hey, what's about to happen? You're about to get that stupid donut on your head. So yeah, it was a bit of that. And honestly, after I gave her, the 2 anti-anxiety pills, one before the surgery, one the next morning, just to kind of chill her out. And I gave her the pain meds the first day. Then the second day, she was looking fine. Didn't seem to be in any pain. Again, I just gave her the pain meds just to be safe. But the third day, I didn't even give it to her. Like, she's so, I don't know. I just love this dog so much, and I'm so proud of her. It's so, in such a silly way. Oh, look who's coming to see me. Hello, could you hear me talk about you? Could you? Oh, see, just cranked her head on my desk. Didn't even notice. Doesn't even care. Doesn't know what's going on. Just loves to be loved. I don't even know if I'm gonna get this on video. I want to pick her up and show you guys all her cute face. But that was pretty much my whole week of just keeping an eye on her. Not doing too much, not working as hard as I could have been. That was the other part of, I think I've mentioned this on every solo podcast, is the solo podcast enjoyment level is different depending on what I've done in that time, right? A week like this, where since you guys saw me last, I haven't done much. I haven't really, I don't like my mustache, how it hangs over my lip. That looks gross. Anyways, sorry, I distracted myself. I need to shave. That's been on my list, to trim my beard for like 3 weeks now. It just hasn't happened. You know how life gets, but it's one of those things where if I had gone and had this crazy week where I did all these things and, worked on the podcast and got all these new things set up, I would love to come and talk to you. But when I haven't, it's almost embarrassing. It's like, it's almost like chastising myself of like, no, I've been lazy. I've been a piece of shit. Like, exactly. It's, in a way, it's verbalizing the internal speak that I've been telling myself all week as I've been a piece of lazy shit. But then you kind of got to, it's one thing just to let it, berate in your own head because nobody else hears it and you don't really bring it into the world. But then when you have to kind of sit and acknowledge it, it's a little bit different, which is good. It's motivating. It's kind of got me a little bit excited to maybe make a change this week and knock that off. Maybe try and set an alarm and hold myself to it. Maybe try and get up at 7 a.m. every day this week. I don't know. Maybe it'll be something different, trying to, drink more water. I think what I really need is I operate a lot on momentum. And when I've just been lazy, it's hard to, when I'm lazy, I eat bad. When I eat bad, I'm lazier. I can skip things. I don't, it really snowballs. And, I think that's what I need to do this week is just, pick one thing and try and get some positive momentum. I have to go back to Grand Prairie this week, pack up the rest of my shit, which I'm very, I don't know why I have anxiety about it. Nervous is just a big thing. It's a lot to get done. It's just, it's something hanging over my head, even though I know it's going to be fine. It's probably going to be pretty easy. Like, not physically, with lots of heavy lifting, but not anything unhandleable. And I'm really, as much as I have anxiety for that, I'm really excited for that to be over because I feel like I haven't fully moved out until then. And now I get that off my plate. This is going to be my new base of operations. I can travel out of here. I can return. Everything is, it's something I'm excited for, but for some reason I have a weird little anxiety about actually getting it done and getting it off my list. So I don't know why. I have to do a little bit more thinking on that. That's what's coming up this week. And then, I had this dog's birthday on Saturday. Alyssa came and got her on Friday and spent the day with her, and then the morning of her birthday with her, and then came and brought her back. So just had kind of a day. I knew that Saturday was going to be packed full of sports. There was UFC London, so it was an early card. Started at 11:30 and went till about 4 o'clock. And then there was also an Oilers game in there at 1. So lots of action, like a perfect day for myself. Oh, and every weekend, for most weekends, there's LCS, which is a video game called League of Legends. They have a professional league. It's esports, and that's always on the weekends, and it's getting really spicy. There's lots of action going there. So I had pretty much just a sports weekend, if you can call that sports. I call that sports. And maybe I can just take a small detour to try and pitch it to you guys. Not in the sense of getting you to watch it, but to try and get you to understand what I see in it as a sports fan. Not only is it an amazing video game that is fun to play. That's a given. It has a huge player base. If it didn't, it wouldn't. But the sports side of it, I've thought about this so much. I'm trying to think of how now to explain it to others, but there's something with traditional sports. Like, take hockey, you take basketball, you take baseball. There's so much amazing things that come with the tradition. And there's also some real negative things that come with it. Everything's kind of entrenched, and this is just the way we do things. And that's what I love about MMA is it's so different. it has way less of a history. So everything's more on the forefront, and things are, MMA came to be in the internet age, right? There was message boards. That's kind of how it got created. It is so much more integral to the fan experience. And there's not this 80 years of tradition that, if you want to make any change, you kind of got to buck against this, right? And MMA kind of found the sweet spot where it has been able to take all of the positives and the structure of what the leagues before them have done, TV deals. What else would it be? There's a whole bunch of things that they've piggybacked on, they've built upon with the UFC in particular, and that's amazing. But it also has this completely new generation of media. It's not this stuffy old sports center. It's people that are just people. And they're not tied to anything, but they are passionate about the sport, and they make real, genuine connections with the people in the sport. It's not insulated through agents and all these things. Those are there too, but just because there's not that history, they don't stand in the way. It allows you this much deeper look into what it is, and it allows for it to be tailored to what the audience wants. And because of that connection, that message actually makes it up. I'm sure the NHL and the MLB would love to tailor their sports to what people want, but they're so insulated away that they never actually get to see the truth, that there's just, corporate bullshit and bureaucracy in between them and the actual fan that really prevents that message from ever getting up there. And it, or it doesn't never get there. It's just always 5 years too late, 10 years too late. Right. And that's why when you see a big disruptor like, Spit and Chicklets come in and absolutely turn the hockey world on its head, and they're just scrambling to catch up, it forces them to innovate. In that TNT broadcast where they brought in Paul Bissonnette from the show, Wayne Gretzky, and they let him, fly a little bit more. They take a lot of that tradition out and have let it really breathe, and they can kind of have that freedom to listen and to tailor to what people want. I haven't watched much of it. It's more of an American broadcast, but I love to see that idea of that's what's pushing it forward. And with MMA, you have, it's all that. Now, I promised I'd bring this a fully way around. Now you have these esports, which is what I just argued for MMA times 3. It is completely independent. They have no tradition. There is, it's only been around for less than a decade. I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's slightly more than that, but really it's completely new. And they've built everything themselves. They aren't on traditional TV deals. It's all on the internet. And it is so tied to communities and to Reddit and to everything that it's the type of connection that people would kill for in any other sport, to their professionals and to their organizations and to all this. It's absolutely incredible. And I really appreciate it. And you see the podcast space kind of come in on all these levels, right? The Spit and Chicklets podcast has turned the NHL on its head. MMA podcasts are probably top 5 reasons for the UFC and MMA as a whole growing to this degree. Like, it's not like there was some tradition and podcasts came in and disrupted the MMA space. No, the MMA space was built off of these podcasts and these message boards, and that's what's gotten people so excited about it and given it such a foothold into like the cultural zeitgeist that quickly, which, when you look at other sports that took decades and decades to get to, it's amazing. And then now you see, with esports, it almost missed the boat where long form content came in after, and now there's amazing esports podcasts that you can really stay connected to, and you don't have to watch every game. And another thing that is weird about esports is the broadcasters are also like, how do I explain this? Because I'm trying to even figure out what the difference is in real time while trying to explain it. Because in hockey, you have, take the Oilers. You have, Louis DeBrusk and, what's his pickle? Oh, this is going to kill me. He used to do the radio. Anyway, the broadcast team for the Oilers, you have them, and they're kind of, they're hired by the Oilers. They do this job. They could be replaced. It's kind of something, if people like them, but the NHL does not depend on them for anything really. They fill a function, but they don't really depend on them. Whereas esports is completely different, where the actual like broadcasters, both on the desk in between games, kind of breaking things down, and the ones that actually call the games, because it all kind of started in such small areas on the internet, they kind of did all these rules. And it's not like each team has their own broadcast crew. It's the broadcast crew of the league and the broadcasters themselves, and they become the celebrity, and they kind of dictate everything, or at least they did. And it's becoming less so now that, you know, more people are hopping into the space and there's more competition. But at the very start, they were everything to what the sport was. Like, they got to dictate the narratives of like which teams are better than others. They would, you know, and they would do it in real time, you know, battling against each other on the broadcast desk to kind of say why they think one team is better than the other. But their personalities are completely intertwined with the sport itself, which is so different than any other sport. And it's hard to, you know, it's funny because there's certain mindsets and skill sets that you can develop for a long time. And then if you think that they apply and they don't, you can almost be worse off. One area I see this is when you see traditional business minds try and enter the internet age and like the podcast age, and like everything they, you know, every instinct they have from business is wrong when you get into this, because it's completely different and it doesn't apply, right? If you try and make a podcast where it's just, you'll sell out, you'll take any ads, as many ads, you're going to put, you know, 50% of a 3-hour podcast could be commercials if it'll make more money, right? Like it's complete profit maximization. If you try that, no one will listen to your shit. Your instincts are completely off. And I think this happens with esports as well, is there's so many people like myself that love sports in general. And now this is kind of the new take on sports, and you try and put your old paradigms of, you know, what you've learned by being a fan of the NHL, the MLB, over top of this new league where it's not physical. Like the demands, and I don't mean to degrade what these esports professionals do. It's absolutely incredible, the hours they put in, the grind, but it's not dependent on your physical body. And that is so different. And it's so funny to watch these ownership groups and these organizations try and bring teams in, or create teams and bring players in, looking at this old paradigm of kind of how sports should affect it. And it's so different, and they get absolutely dumpstered. And it's not like you have a hockey team where, you know, there's a little bit of turnover, maybe one or two different players over here. No, you can have an LCS team with completely new players on it. Almost every team is completely rolled over every like 2 to 3 years. And there's some exceptions to that, but like, it also is not it's not weird to see a team be completely different year over year. Even sometimes mid-year, they'll make such big changes. And also the game changes. It's not like hockey where the rules are set. Like, yeah, at the end of the year, sometimes in the summer, they'll make a rule change. They'll change the offside. They'll allow challenging on a penalty. But because League of Legends is a game that is patched every week, the game changes. There's new characters that get added. There's always things changing, and it's always kind of trying to stay ahead on the peak. So now you see these teams build out these huge infrastructure systems of coaches and mental coaches and all these types of things, analysts, you know, pick man coaches. You're trying to kind of bring it out. And then you have, but what's so funny is the players that are in those seats, it's gotten so competitive. There's so much money in it. They are far and away, for the most part, the best players available are in those seats. There's probably a few exceptions, right? And there's also some really weird ones. There's a guy named Jensen, who is one of the best at his role for this game. But because it's such a new days, just the way in the negotiations happened this year of, you know, they didn't want to tell him they were looking elsewhere until they had his replacement locked up. But then he didn't get to look elsewhere. So kind of just the way it shook out is he doesn't have a team this year, right? So there is exceptions, but for the most part, the people that have the best ability to win, because there's a lot of money, these teams throw a lot of money at these players that want to have the best. And because of that, you have the best there. And it's a constantly evolving game. So now you have these players who are the best in the world being coached by these people who aren't necessarily at their level and are trying to tell them, hey, this is how you should play the game, when they're going, If you knew that, and if you were right, you'd be in the seat right now. And it creates this really weird dynamic where you have this push and pull of, now you are an owner. A bunch of the owners are like NBA owners that are now seeing the absolute dollar signs in their eyes and have come over and bought these LCS teams, and they try and apply their sports paradigm at it of, like, we're going to bring in these coaches, and you just see them get swindled by these idiots that think they know what they're talking about. And I was just listening to a podcast with these professional players and kind of breaking down the dynamics of, trying to listen to a coach. And they said that there are some really amazing coaches, and they said the best coaches have proven that they can play at the highest level and all that. But it's just so fascinating to see, you get so much of the benefit. Like, as a sports fan, I get to see how much of this is, hitting the same sports buttons within me that make me love hockey and football and all this stuff. You're hitting so many of these things. But from the actual, how, like, as content, it hits those same pieces, but actually with how it works and how it runs and like how it works on the ground, how the actual gears intermesh, it is completely different. And, I just find it so fascinating. I barely, I still play League of Legends every once in a while, but I'm not good at it. I don't play with actual people. I don't, like, enjoy the game like I used to. And the main reason for that is just lack of people to play with. I still think it's an amazing game if you have, other people to play with, but just to play by yourself, it's too stressful. You got to take it too serious. It's too hard of a game. Like, it's not, Mario Kart where you hop in, it doesn't really matter. It's, what will people, I'm trying to think of, like, the casual gamer of, like, it's like Call of Duty, right? Because Call of Duty, it's competitive, you care, but the games are what? 8 minutes, 10 minutes. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. It doesn't really matter. But these League of Legends games are like 20 to 40 minutes. It is very much, and it in Call of Duty, you go out, you get kills, right? And for people that don't play video games, this is going to make no sense. But in Call of Duty, there's like kill streaks where if you're doing really, really good, you're not dying, you get like extra things that help you play. But they're kind of finite. If you keep that up, you can keep it rolling and you can make it really oppressive to the other team, but it's kind of rare. It's not the same. Whereas League of Legends is, everything is multiplicative. How you start out, like, if you start doing bad, if you make a bad play, if you get a death early and you're behind, everything functions off of like gold, and you buy more items and you get stronger. So like everything snowballs. So you could play a 30-minute game, a 40-minute game where you are just getting dumpstered start to finish, right? Like and it matters to people, not to you. You decide what matters to you, but it's hard to not. This is what kind of turned me off of playing it by myself, is I didn't really care all that much, win, lose, but everybody on the team really cared and they were really passionate about it, and they get mad and it's like, I don't want to ruin anybody else's day, not playing it. But I remember when we used to play in university, when we get, 4 or 5 people together, you all are maybe in the same room running Ethernet cords from other Lister rooms in to have enough. And you get in and it is such a coordinated game. It is such a, it is amazing. It's hard for me to try and sit here. I really want to have somebody on that is maybe as much of a nerd about this stuff as I can, so that I have someone to bounce this off of, because it's hard to do in the moment of just pulling what makes it special to you and not really abstracting that to what makes it special in general. And I feel like if you had someone to bounce off, this would go better. But those are some of my favorite times from university, was staying up till 5 a.m. playing this absolutely bananas game that is still growing and has changed and has, I've got to watch it. That was damn near 10 years ago. That was probably 2013, 2014-ish when I first started playing that game, and to watch it evolve and to stay current and to grow and the player base to grow. And it's still, an absolute dominant force in the world of video gaming is astounding to me. Like the shelf life of a normal video game is a year, if you're lucky, right? 6 months, 3 months, maybe. And for these guys to absolutely keep dominating the game. And there's a couple other ones, right? There's some other examples of that, but for me as a fan, to someone that can speak to this, it's hard to explain. It's not hard to explain to people. It's hard to get people on board because there's such a mountain of learning that you have to do to be able to really understand it and to enjoy it to that degree. I don't know how I got on here talking about LCS. This is crazy. Not where I meant to go, but it's where we are. There's such a steep learning curve that it's hard to get people to jump on board and to enjoy it like you enjoy it, right? So there's almost no sense. You almost just, well, this is something I'm going to enjoy, but I'll never be able to convince my friends to, unless they do it themselves and they fall through, because it is an amazing thing. But if they don't go through that, and trying to push it on them is probably going to make it even more difficult. But you see the magic that it has, and you're trying to tell people like, this is this amazing thing, like get on board. Here's a good example. So probably, I'm going to say like 6 to 8 years ago, probably around like 2015, 2016, right? This LCS that I've been talking about, this league of, it's the North American version, because there's the LCS in America, LEC in Europe, there's the LCKs, the Korean one, they're all over it. This game is absolutely mind-blowingly worldwide. Like, for people that aren't aware of it, you would be astounded at what a cultural pillar this game is to a certain subsection of world populations. But it was growing. I could see it growing at a rate, and I could see how they weren't even scraping the surface of how amazing it could be and what type of sponsors they could get, right? Now you see big real estate companies. I think they had like the Bud Light sponsorship and shit now, like these days, but back then it wasn't like that. It was still kind of in its infancy stage. And I was, telling my dad, like, you need to try and, like, if there's a way for you to invest in this, I promise you it will return like crazy. Like, if you could, I was throwing like buy a team, right? Like, that's kind of crazy money to throw, but I was saying, like, theoretically, if you could come up with the cash to buy one of these, I don't know what it would have cost at that time, maybe a couple $1,000,000, like, even to resell it 2 years later, even, just, it's going to be bananas. And that there was no way it was just a pipe dream. And it was more just me trying to, stake my claim of like, I want to make a futures bet. Like, I know you're not going to invest in this, but just imagine right now we did our due diligence and we invested in this, and then watch what happens in a couple of years. And to see that, and it's just like the UFC. I mean, the UFC is a little bit different because it is such a behemoth now, but it's not even like, if you want to invest in something, invest in Endeavor, which owns the UFC, but like, it is so far away from its true potential. And that's same with LCS. And like, but to try and explain that to people and trying to tell people why and get them over, it's just a feeling I have, right? It's not just a feeling, but that's how it comes across when you're trying to explain it to people, because it's such an alien world to them. But for me, as just a fan, to kind of sit back and watch the growth of it and watch where it is now, it's outstanding. Outstanding. Yeah, I don't know where in the hell that came from. I don't know if that was interesting to anybody. There's probably like 2 or 3 League of Legends nerds that was like, oh, that was the best. That was a great breakdown. Maybe a few sports fans. I don't know. Anywho, let's get back to some more traditional sports. How about them Oilers? This year has been a very interesting year for the Oilers. They started so hot. They looked incredible. And then the wheels fell off. They looked like shit. Everybody kind of gave up. It wasn't just that, and injury problems. Not going to lie, losing Puljujarvi a couple times. That's a big hurt. That's a big hit. Nuge. On one of these podcasts, I called the shit out of that. It was in one of the darker times, and I called, hey, if we get Nuge back, he's such a big part of our team. His defensive play, we're going to really kick it back into gear. And he came back and it really turned us around. So I don't think you can, deny the injury trouble side of it, but everybody has injury trouble. You got to play through that shit. But now under Woodcroft, coaching change, they look like a new set of players, and getting Evander Kane. That was probably the biggest saving grace the Oilers could have ever hoped for. And as an Oilers fan, where shit like that never happens, is there some big player that comes to Edmonton? And I mean, it's kind of shitty, all the surrounding bullshit that had to happen for us to finally get kind of a lucky break and get something like that. But that's just the life of an Oilers fan. And as shitty as that is, that's what's going to make it all the more special when the Edmonton Oilers finally fucking do something of note. It's going to taste all that more sweeter because we know that we didn't get any of those lucky bounces. There's no college prospects signing, pulling the Adam Fox to come to the Edmonton Oilers. Like, no, they're going to New York Rangers. They're going to, LA if they could, if they're a half decent team, Colorado, right? Like, there's so many better places to be. The taxes up here are crazy. It's cold. The fan base is nuts. If you start playing like shit, the fans are going to get on you. And it just doesn't make for a very conducive place to run a team or for players to want to come to. But considering all that, they're on a 5-game win streak. They just had a 5-game homestand and they won all 5. Incredible. Got to go to a couple of the games. And I think there's kind of certain core, I still believe in this. I'm going to still make the point, but I think this is a bad reason. I'm going to make a point, but I don't think this is a good example to make the point. All right. So I think there's certain core identities of like what a team is, because the teams turn over, and with different players, different personnel, different coaches, you're going to, play differently. But there's certain teams like the Philadelphia Flyers that kind of have an identity of being mean and big fighters and tough. And it's a really hard place to come into play. And it kind of, over different iterations of the team, they've always kind of had that identity, right? And that's what I stand behind. I just think I was using a poor example. I was going to try and make a poor example of this. And what I was thinking, I was going to say that like part of that for the Oilers is that they really ride off their fan base. The reason I think that's stupid is because every team obviously rides off their fan base, right? Duh. So stupid, but I'm wrong and right. I'm going to give myself a check mark and an X on that one. But so where I want to go with that is like the Oilers are so, and just like every other team should be, are so dependent on their fan base and the energy in that building, especially for home games. But that goes on the road. Just when you have that city behind you, it makes you play a lot differently. And I think for most of the year, going to hockey games where, you see down the States, they have full barns, everyone's going nuts, and you come back to Edmonton and it's just not the same. The games aren't the same, the mask things, whatever. And people, think it's so silly. Why are you even talking about a mask? And, I'm on the other side saying, you guys have no idea what you just put your kids through, the developmental issues that are going to come with this. Like, we just haven't even come close to paying the piper on that. We're only going to start realizing that in the years to come, what damage we did. But even in some so silly as sports, right? Like, I think that is, I don't want to call that silly because I think it is super important. And I don't think we have any idea what we've brought upon ourselves there. But and the half capacity, when they took away the concessions so that you can only go to the game, you have to sit down, no smiling, no concessions, no, you can have 8 ounces of water, but you can't bring the water cup to your seat. You have to drink it on the concourse, only while taking your mask up and down. Like, it was just such a terrible environment in there that the team struggled. And when you go to the games, it still seems halfway exciting because hockey is just an exciting sport, but you don't know what you're missing until you get it back. And just recently they went to full capacity, no mask mandates. And that is fucking different. As much as you want to say, it doesn't make it made a difference. You can feel it in the building, even before the game started. The first game, full capacity, this was before the mask mandate fell out, but nobody was wearing it, right? Like everyone was just kind of enjoying it, right? It was a different kind of energy. People were feeling it, and the team played a little bit different, and you could notice it. Then the first game, no mask, full barn, it was even another level on top of that. And you see the team react again. And it's like, man, you can't lay it all at the feet of COVID and all this bullshit to say why the Oilers sucked. That would be a pretty big cop out. But I don't think you can really take that out of the conversation either. I think that is hugely important to how they play, why they play, and all that jazz. So now to see how they play, McDavid's absolutely flying around out there. Evander Kane can finally be the Oiler that can tip a puck. I mean, we haven't been able to get any goals tipping in how long, and now finally, he starts tipping some goals in, and Yamo all of a sudden is, getting his hand-eye coordination back. I think Puljujarvi had one last night off a tip, and they're starting to actually bring that to bear, which I was for a long time been kind of hounding, as that's an area of the game where we really need to get better. And it seems like we get beat up on that all the time. You have when our goalies were ever playing good, they'd be standing on their head for a bit, and then you lose you lose a couple goals to a few tips that are completely not on their shoulders. It's the hardest thing in hockey is goalies stopping pucks from a screen or from a tip, right? And it's so hard to put that on the goalie when your team can't do the same thing, right? You get a couple of those goals scored on you, it's whatever, as long as you're getting them back and it's kind of even up. When you never get those goals and they always get scored on you, it gets a little bit draining. So yeah, no, I've been loving watching the Oilers. I still stand by that Yamamoto is one of the best fucking players in the league, and I think that it's so funny to watch how it went with Yamamoto, because it used to be such a hot take, and I say this probably too much. I probably said it a million times in the podcast, but I was really high on this kid, even coming out, when we drafted him, and he, shoved it to the reporters and said, like, what do you think of the Oilers moving up to draft you? What did you tell him? He said, I said, you know what? You should draft me because I'm going to make every team that passes on me before pay, right? And just always had that fire, and everyone kind of looked away from his size. But I thought, this guy's going to be special. And as soon as he came in, like everyone thought I was crazy for how high I was. And always I was screaming when he was playing another match, bring Yamo up, see what happens. And then they finally did. And then everybody was huge on Yamo right after that, right? Like I felt like I was shouting into a void, and then all of a sudden he comes up, turns the team around, and they played awesome. Him and Drysdale had that chemistry for end of that year. Was that last year? No, I think it might have been the year before, and then last year might have been his full year here, whenever it was. And then it became everybody loves Yamo, and it almost became taboo, like, oh, everyone's way too high on this kid. And I was like, no, I will continue to be high on this kid because he's fucking impressive. And how impressive he is, considering the disadvantage of his height and his weight out there in a league of just absolute mutants. I think he's just going to keep getting better and better because you figure out how to play around that, and you do it at every age, right? I think I might have said this on the podcast with Corey Cross, and I might have actually used Yamamoto as the example, but I think a guy like Corey Cross that was so fucking tall, goddamn 10 feet tall, probably takes you a little bit longer to kind of figure out how to use that because you're not that traditional player. You can't just watch the average guy of how to play. No, you got to play your game a little bit differently. And I think the same thing applies to a really small player is you can't just take the traditional route. You kind of got to figure out how your skills match to it. And I think considering that, how good he is already is super impressive. And I just think he's going to get better. Me and Chase, we always have stupid little bets and gentlemen's agreements and things going on, all these little things, and one of those is that I've bet with Chase that at some point in Yamo's career, he scores 30 goals, right? Which might sound crazy, but I just believe it with everything in me. And the way he's played when they put him on McDavid's line now, and he's just absolutely stripping pucks and feeding McDavid, he's exactly what he need. Chase made a really good comparison with Crosby, and who did he say that he had? I think it was maybe Kunitz or something, like just that guy to go in, dig out pucks, create some chaos, throw his tiny little body around and make people cough up pucks. And that changes how they play. And another thing is getting Archibald back. And, I've always loved Archibald, love how he plays, love the energy he brings, love how he hits. But now I love Archibald on a whole other level because he chose to be unvaccinated. You know what? Sounds like someone like myself, I had concerns about it and had health issues that that's a choice he made. And now he can only play home games. He can't travel, which is, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. And I don't know who I'm talking to because I'm talking to myself. So don't get myself started. I'm telling myself that. And he's just been through so much. He got COVID. He had, inflammation of the heart. Like we've seen that the spike protein can cause, however you get that spike protein in you, whether it's from actually catching the disease or, an adverse reaction to the vaccine. Seen it happen to a million people, right? And people just berated him for it, and that's what you get. And it'd be very easy for a guy like that to kind of say, well, fuck these guys, I'm not even gonna come back and play. Why would I want to? But to come back for the team, play like he is, and to give that energy and you see it be infectious. Archie's out there throwing his little body around. Yamo's hitting more. Evander Kane throws a few hits. Draisaitl's throwing a few hits, and we need that. That's how we operate, and our game steps up in such a level when we do that. I just think you cannot overstate his reimplementation into the team, even if it's only for home games. And as well, Cassian as well. You can't talk about hitting in the Oilers and not bring up Zach Cassian, and that is just such a boon to our team. And I think once Nuge is back, because as well as we're playing, we are still absolutely defensively inept, and it is astounding how bad it is. I love my Oilers. I usually don't say too many bad words about them, but defensively we have some work. And I'm not even talking about our defense. I feel like our defense has been playing pretty good. Keith is looking his age a little bit. And me and Chase talk about this all the time. We just really hope, because he used to be a demon in the playoffs, and that's what we're hoping. Same with, Chase always says this about Warren Fogle too, is, he's a playoff performer, and that's what we need out of him. Just get him to the playoffs. He can play a little bit different. He can play his game, and he's going to really step up then. That's what I'm hoping for Keith. But I'm not even laying this at the feet of our defense. I think they've been playing all right, but our defensive abilities and our defensive systems for our forwards is just piss poor. And it always kind of has been, but when we lost also that offensive streak and our kind of our swagger and how the Oilers play when they're really firing, they're buzzing like they have been the last 5 games, like perfect example. doesn't matter if you have a little bit of defensive liabilities, if you're putting up 4 or 5 goals, 6 goals a night, and everybody's buzzing, and you get that offensive ability that really hems them in and makes them work and makes it really hard for them to even get into your D zone. But when it does, it kind of is a shit show and breaks down. You almost get scored on almost every time it enters your zone. But if you're playing most of the game in their end, it doesn't really matter. Where's it going with that? Right. But like Nugent Hopkins is he's antithetical to everything I just said. He is one of the best defensive forwards in the league. Love his play in the offensive zone, good on a power play, great all around player. But what really gets me is his defensive abilities. I love how he plays. He's always in the right spot. Whereas I feel like what's tough for me of usually what's wrong, and I think this might be different at NHL level, but like growing up playing minor hockey, usually defensive ability was not trying hard enough. It wasn't usually like systems or being in the wrong place. It was kind of growing up, like, oh, you just didn't put the effort. You guys just weren't back checking, right? Like that's always what it was, at least back at the level that I played. Just wasn't people back checking. I don't really see that as every once in a while you get the old Draisaitl doesn't get a call, so he's lazy back, right? You see that all the time. I'm not even putting it that, but it seems like McDavid, he back checks hard and goes, but he always goes to the wrong spot. Like he's in there, he's trying, but he goes to the wrong guy and things just kind of break down and creates a hole. I shouldn't lay that at that feet of the best player in the world. And also, who the fuck am I? What am I talking about? I don't know this. Right. You guys all know this. Take it with, a whole spoonful of salt. But Nuge is not that. And he really makes it. So at least whatever line you put him on, that 1 out of 4 lines is going to be pretty defensively adept out there, which is huge. And what I love about how good the top 2 lines are playing right now without him in the lineup is that, as blasphemous as it is to think of, putting Nuge on the 3rd line, if you can make a really, threatening shut down forward line with I don't know who you throw on that, some sort of pairing that doesn't mess up these nice two lines that we have rolling too much. The Oilers are going to be kind of a scary threat. We need a goaltender, but I don't know. Koskinen, when he's not chucking up pizzas from behind the net, which is, it is what it is. What can you say about that? That's just tough. He's been playing some fucking unbelievable games where he has stood on his head, and he's such a good goalie within his net. Sometimes he makes some bad calls outside of his net, and sometimes, I don't know, even he used to have a propensity to let in some really easy goals. I haven't seen that out of him as much. He has given away some pure pizzas. Not gonna deny that at all. But most of the goals that are getting him now are either a tip, screen. There's a reason for those pucks to go in, and I feel like that's so much different, and it's different for the team too. There's nothing more demoralizing than a bad goal that the goalie should have had. It just takes the energy out of his team. A nice tip, a defensive breakdown where it's coming right from, if there was like percentage amount of chances per team that comes from behind the net out to a wide open player for a nice shot or walk in, the Oilers would be number 1. I guarantee it. But I don't put that at the feet of the goalie. If you stop those, that's a bonus, but the team should just not allow those to happen, or maybe keep it to once, twice a game, not like, or breakaways, like 4 breakaways in the first period of the last game or whatever it was. It's like, but that's the price you pay for that high flying offense. You're going to have that a little bit, but I don't know. I'm excited, and I have been excited. I feel like my fandom of the Oilers is so closely tied to Chase because we always talk Oilers all the time. And he has just been such a negative Nelly all year about like the Oilers and stuff. And I've just been, which used to be completely flopped. And I think this is why, because we're such both contrarians and devil's advocate that, whatever the one person is, the other one goes to the opposite side of it. And it used to be where I was negative. The Oilers suck. Like we're brutal. We're never going to be good. And Chase is the one. No, they're wicked. You're an idiot. They're the best. Just wait and see. And now it completely flipped this year, to where I've just been, even through all the darkest times, just no, they're great. We just need it's bad bounces. It's this, it's that. They just need to make these little changes. And it's so funny to now watch it kind of pick up. And now I can even see Chase start to he's still, that he's that battered wife. He doesn't want to get his hopes up too much for it, which probably describes 95% of Oiler fans right now. But for whatever reason, I'm over it. Oh, I didn't even talk about McLeod. You want to talk about, the visual representation of being an Oiler fan, of just, the storm clouds that it has been for a very long time. And then you see we draft McDavid and it's just, that beam of light that comes down and is really nice for a while. And then it kind of closed in again. It kind of got, man, are we wasting McDavid's prime? Just not a lot to be excited about. And yeah, Ryan McLeod is not going to single-handedly drag a team to a Stanley Cup, but that's not what we're looking for as Oilers fans right now. I can only speak for myself, but that's at least not what I'm looking for. And to see somebody that, you can be excited about and that doesn't cost all that much money yet and, can do so many of the things. And as you can see him getting better each and every game and adding new facets to his game that maybe he's always had, but just didn't have the confidence playing at that level to really bring out is so refreshing. Absolutely love watching the guy play. He is just a stud. And that shakes up so much of, and I think when they're putting him with McDavid, that was great for his confidence, great for so many things, but they're such similar players that he didn't really get to fully utilize it now that they've taken him off and put him, kind of swapped him and Yamo, which I think was always tough because Yamo and Draisaitl had such good chemistry and all of that stuff. But I think Yamo will have chemistry with anyone. You see him and McDavid and how well they've played. I just think he's a stupendous player. But now I think we've really unlocked, we're seeing what McLeod can do when he's, not subject to the gravity of McDavid being on the ice. I think you really see his full potential. He's great at carrying the puck. He makes really good decisions. He's never lackadaisical. He's always, trying hard and getting to those pucks and getting to those positions, going in the corners, which, you think in the NHL would not be an issue, but sometimes it is. It's been awesome. I've been a really happy Oilers fan. And that sentence has probably been said maybe a couple hundred times over the last 10 years of millions of Oilers fans. To be a happy Oilers fan, this is a rare occasion. So I think it's good to talk about it and give them, the props that they should get when they are playing good. So yeah, I've been really enjoying watching the Oilers. A little bit of UFC talk. I know I've had a couple people say, I love the podcast, but when you start talking that MMA shit, I just turn it right off or I skip it. So probably going to talk a little bit about the card this weekend because it was just unbelievable. Unfucking believable. I'm going to pull it up just so I don't forget any of the excitement or any of the big finishes. But feel free, if you don't want to listen to this, to skip forward. So card starts off, it's a London card, which used to be a staple of the UFC because the UFC used to go all around. They'd have, the one a month pay-per-view, which is stacked. You have to pay for it. Usually they're in Vegas. Sometimes they do the pay-per-views in other places, but usually in some sort of big venue. But then on all the fight nights, which they've been doing at the Apex lately, they would travel all over, right? They do one in Wichita, one in Poland, one in, they'd be all over the map. And always part of that was the London cards. And the European cards, the way their sports fans is a little bit different than here. I don't know if anybody's ever watched them play soccer and watch the type of fandom that they create there and the chants and the atmosphere. When you apply that to a sport like fighting, it creates a different type of atmosphere. And we've been missing it for 3 years, right? The last card before pandemic, I think, was a London card. So we got one last taste and then we've been completely shut the tap off. And since then, there has been some huge names in UK MMA and kind of European MMA that have really come up. It used to be there's, Michael Bisping was always the poster boy and there's a couple other big names, but it wasn't like it is now. And they were able to put a card together top to bottom with all either UK or European centric fighters that are top notch. This card was almost as stacked as a pay-per-view without whatever at the top, just with European guys. It was unbelievable. So it started off, this Mokaev guy, he was a refugee, came to the UK, he has a great story. And just everybody loves him. Came out, got a really nice choke to start it off. There's a Welsh female fighter that everybody really loves, McKenna. She came out and put a great show on, ended up losing the fight to this other really talented young girl that I think has a pretty good future ahead of her. Jack Shore, who is I think he's 15-0 now, but he was 14-0 going into this fight. He's a Welsh fighter, and he was fighting third fight in. He's an undefeated prospect, like one of the biggest names, but that's how deep this card was. He was all the way down there, put on he was up against a really, really tough guy. That was probably the closest odds wise going into it, like of a coin flip. We don't know who's going to win this one, which is crazy to say when you have an undefeated fighter on one side, but that just shows the type of matchmaking that it was and the type of fight it was. And they just put on a clinic for 3 rounds. In the third round, Jack Shore dropped him like twice. It was unbelievable. And the crowd's going nuts. And this is third fight in the card. And it's already electric in there. Then Paul Craig comes out. Paul Craig is this Scottish warrior, 205er, great jiu-jitsu, always seems to pull, wins out of the jaws of defeat. Did this again, looked like he was in a really, really tough spot, getting grounded, pounded, and threw up a triangle, tapped this guy out. Crowd goes nuts. Then there's 2 Russian heavyweights. This Pavlovich, who has just been on a rampage, he's kind of walking his way up into title contention here. Just one knockout at a time. It's like, who can stand against this guy? That was awesome. Really nice knockout. Then there was 2 like kind of silencing of the crowds on this card, right? The rest of it, all the guys that the crowd got to win 90% of the fights. There was 2 that went the other way. So this is Makwan Amirkhani. He's Mr. Finland. He's usually a European guy that would do great on this card and everyone would be behind him, but just who he's fighting. But he has he's been on a bit of a skid, but really came back. Turned off all the social media, didn't do any media availability, didn't do any interviews for this fight. Came in dialed in, and he was fighting Mike Grundy, which is an awful story. Really sad story. His dad just got diagnosed with a terminal disease. Only has so long to live, and it was going to be, he was in the crowd, and everybody knew it. And this was a big thing leading up to the fight. And everyone was really behind him, and lost in the first round due to an anaconda choke by Amirkhani. Amirkhani's king of the anaconda choke. It was a great finish. Just kind of a little bit taking the window of the sails, because I think everyone wanted to see Grundy get that win for his dad. Kind of a tough outing, but again, great finish. You take the narratives out of it, and it was a great little fight. Then you have Ilia Topuria, which is another undefeated Georgian fighter, fighting Jai Herbert, who's from Wolverhampton, UK. I think that's what it's called, something with wolf in it. He came out and was super big underdog. Topuria is undefeated. Topuria is another one of those biggest prospects UFC has in Europe. But he usually fights at featherweight, and he came up for lightweight, so he looked a lot smaller, and he got cracked a couple times in that first round. Jai Herbert was putting it on him, I think busted up his nose, so Topuria's mouthpiece kept falling out, and after this first round, I was like, holy shit, we could be seeing a huge upset here, right? And Topuria had gotten into it earlier in the week with Paddy the Baddy, who we'll get to, who's like the next huge superstar in the UFC. It's absolutely unreal, the rocket ship he's been on. And Topuria comes out in the second round and looks like he completely righted the ship, doesn't look as shaky, puts on a really good, really back and forth. He wasn't getting his ass beat, but he also wasn't, dominating his back and forth with this Jai Herbert, and then just lands this left hook to the body, right to the chin, and just sends him to the shadow realm, puts him down, which is kind of the other low point of the crowd or the point of the fights for the crowd, because not only did Jai Herbert lose, who is a UK fighter, he lost to Ilia Topuria, who got into it earlier that week with Paddy Pimblett, who we'll get to here in a second. But no, let's get into Paddy Pimblett right now, because this kind of sets the stage for the rest of the card. Because that is, as much as Alexander Volkov and Tom Aspinall, who are both heavyweights and were the main event of the card, as much as they were the main event, the people's main event was Paddy Pimblett. And Paddy Pimblett is this guy from Liverpool who started fighting in Cage Warriors, which is the European UFC, right? It's the biggest European MMA organization. And it's a big feeder. That's where Conor McGregor came from. Who else? A million different guys that fought in the UFC that are European. They've all come through Cage Warriors. And Paddy Pimblett, at 18 years old, looks like just this scrawny little kid, comes in at bantamweight and starts fighting, and he just has this personality and gets over the first couple fights, and when he gets on the mic, he just has this belief in himself that is just next level, and you can feel it. And so before these fights on Friday, actually, excuse me, I went back on Fight Pass and watched every one of UFC or every one of Paddy Pimblett's Cage Warriors fights through his whole run. And it was amazing to watch him come in at this. He's 26 years old now. So this is 8 years ago that his Cage Warriors career started. And he comes in, 18, shaved head, like just scrawny as all hell, but great personality, big wins, big heart, can take a crazy punch, can throw a crazy punch, but he's amazing on the ground. And he has great jiu-jitsu and just all heart. And he's got this haircut, like just this like super bowl cut. He didn't have it when he was really young. When he was 18 coming in, he had his head shaved. But I don't know, maybe 2-3 fights in, he starts fighting with this bowl cut. And everyone loves him. And they start putting these cards on, these Cage Warriors cards in Liverpool at the, what's that arena called in Liverpool? The O2 is the one in England. It's the, shit, I know this and I can't remember. It's where Darren Till used to fight. Anyway. And he jumps out of the cage after almost every win, gets into the crowd with him. He's got this crazy walk-up music and just becomes this cult icon in European MMA. And he's young, right? And he wins the Cage Warriors featherweight title, which is 145. He started at 135, went up to 45 as he's growing because he started at 18, right? And then he's maybe like 21, wins the featherweight title in Cage Warriors, loses it, maybe wins it back. No, I think when he came back, maybe he was fighting at lightweight anyway, but just had this incredible career and was like in UK MMA and European MMA was this huge star, but you never really know what you got until you bring him to the UFC. So during the pandemic, I think it was maybe last year, he got signed to the UFC, and this was a big deal, right? Like to MMA people, when everybody knows who Paddy Pimblett is, it just hadn't really crossed over to the mainstream, to the North American audience. But when he got signed, it was a big deal, right? Like all these places were doing write-ups, and you never really see a big deal made of somebody signing with the UFC, right? Unless they come with, like when Michael Chandler came over from Bellator, that was a big deal. But you could tell, oh, this is a pretty big deal. But he's not untested, but compared to the UFC and what an absolute meat grinder it is of just like the best guys in the world, even compared to like Bellator and stuff, it's not a comparison. So you don't know what you're going to get out of him. They gave him a fight with what's his name, Luigi Vendramini, I think was the guy, and he knocked him out. And the thing about Paddy is he fights with a style where he's going to take some punches, and it makes it exciting. He takes some, gives some, and eventually he finds a way to finish it. So in that first fight, in the first round, he had taken a few big shots, and everyone's kind of rattled. Even myself, when I was watching it, because I hadn't watched his whole Cage Warriors, I'd maybe seen 1 or 2 fights his before. And after going back and watching all those Cage Warriors fights, I actually watched his first fight in the UFC on Friday. And I was, after seeing who he is and how he fights, I was not worried at all watching that other fight. But in the moment, and putting my shoes in like anybody that's a UFC fan that didn't know him, and this is the first time getting to see him, it was quite exciting, and the energy, and just, it sounded like Liverpool in that stupid little Apex Center in Vegas. Like you could tell this guy has whatever that is that makes somebody a star. He's got it, and he's got it buckets full. And he was on the card. He was the, not the co-main, but the one under it. And then his training partner and absolute UFC superstar, Molly McCann, are the next 2 fights. So that Ilia Topuria fight. So Ilia Topuria, that just kind of took the wind out of the sails, knocking out Jai Herbert, in the 4th last fight of the card, had got into it with Paddy, threw a bottle of hand sanitizer, called him a bunch of names, got into a big thing. So the UK fans did not like him. That's why it took so much, not only with Jai Herbert losing a bit of the window of the sales, but it was also, what's that dog doing? I see the light go on the automatic. She's trying to find treats over there. But also, he's the antagonist to, what everybody's here for, the Paddy show. So then they come out, and then I guess that was the 5th last fight, because then Meatball Molly McCann comes out and is fighting, what's her name? Something Carolina. Luana Carolina. I don't know. She's big, tough Brazilian, really likes to stand and strike, Muay Thai fighter. And Molly just comes out. She's from Liverpool too, and she is just like the craziest personality. Everybody loves her. She is just for the hardcore MMA fans, she is like everyone's favorite fighter, right? I don't think she had quite crossed into the mainstream. I think after this weekend, she sure fucking has, but like this was her coming out party, really, for like the mainstream fighters. Everyone that's a big fan of MMA knows exactly who Meatball Molly McCann is and loves her, and she's so vulnerable and oh, she's awesome. I can't say enough good things about her, but just comes out and starts going to war with this girl and just punching her face off, just has her up against the fence, and the crowd is going nuts. And this is why I started this whole thing off. Like, you hear crowds go nuts in like Vegas. It's not like London going nuts for one of their own. It is absolutely bananas in there, right? Second round is a little bit closer. She kind of, I think Carolina was just so overwhelmed, just couldn't really get her feet under her with what an onslaught that Molly brought to her off the hop. A little bit closer of a second round, and then going into the third, it's back and forth. They're both quite tired because it's just been a crazy pace, crazy type of fight. The crowd's into it, and they're kind of in the clinch, and Molly just throws a spinning elbow. They're in tight, throws her right elbow completely around, right on the button, and just drops Carolina like she's never been knocked out like that in her whole career, I don't think, and just like sends her to the shadow realm. The crowd erupts. Madness, mayhem. Molly jumps out of the cage. She's running around the cage, and you can see all the UFC staff trying to like keep her in there and kind of running around with her, trying to hop off. She sees Dana, so she knows, oh, well, Dana's right there. I can jump down. So jumps down, gives Dana a big hug, walks out to the crowd. Someone had like a kid had like a replica belt. She throws a belt on her shoulder. She's running through the crowd. Like just, I have goosebumps thinking about it, like just pandemonium. And there's still more fights to come, right? So next fight up is, let me pull it up because I don't know if they fought just back to back or if there's another fight in between. Oh, there was Gunnar Nelson's return. That was awesome. So like Molly just lights the place on fire. And I think it's good that there wasn't fight in between her and Patty, because for some reason we've seen this surprised the hell out of me. I never would have thought this would be true, but it is. Sometimes with fighting, if a fight is so crazy, it almost takes the energy out of the room because like the crowd has just gone so nuts. You almost can't go that nuts for another fight. We saw this couple months back, maybe even a couple years back when Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje fought. And then the fight after them was like an incredible fight, but it wasn't, the crowd didn't give it everything it deserved because they were just so out of it. So Gunnar Nelson, who we haven't seen, he's an Icelandic fighter. Again, really big on the Cage Warrior scene, like really big to European MMA, but hasn't fought in 3 years. He had some rib injuries that he fought back from for a long time. And then he was just kind of getting back to training, was training with the Mountain from Game of Thrones. And they thought it'd be funny to do some grappling. And you got that guy on top, cracked a bunch of his ribs, fucked him up for even longer. So I think he was out for 3 years. Hadn't seen him, but just a jiu-jitsu wizard, right? And over those 3 years, we've seen kind of the really grappling, at least jiu-jitsu grappling guys. Like there's been guys like Khabib and that wrestle people, but there hasn't been, it's kind of been a downturn of really jiu-jitsu specialists. So I think for myself and probably a lot of people included, we're kind of thinking, well, how is that style going to come back? 3 years off ring rust, and he just absolutely got a hold of him, mauled him, got his back, punched his face in from the back, tried to choke him, controlled the whole fight. It was a great return for Gunnar. I think so many people were really excited to see him. And then Paddy, the baddie, Pimblett. His walkout, which I've seen so many times in Liverpool, of just this song. He's got like this techno song that everybody listening, like if you should just Google Paddy Pimblett walkout and just watch the energy, and just this crowd is so fired up for this guy. And it's hard to even like I say, it's hard to even put to words what pandemonium was in that. And he goes out and again takes some punches, right? That's how he fights, takes some, looks like he's in trouble, fights through it. I apologize if you guys can hear the dog barking. She's being in that. Gets a rear naked choke. And that's the thing. So his first fight in the UFC was just stand up, didn't even go to the ground at all. So I think people were kind of expecting maybe that out of Paddy this time. But like for people that watched him before, they know he's actually a more of a ground fighter. He's a ground specialist. So, takes a couple, ends up, kind of pulling guard, gets him down, gets his back, gets the choke in, crowd erupts. He's out of the cage, just like Molly. Molly McCann jumps back in the cage, is celebrating with him, like just absolutely nuts. Like exactly what the UFC was hoping for, but just for it to all kind of fall into place like this and just roll one after the other. It was unbelievable. Like and then grabs the mic. And Paddy's unbelievable. Oh, this is the other thing that I forgot. So after that first win in the UFC, he got $1 million contract from Barstool Sports. And Barstool hadn't done anything really with fighters before. This is their first time that they're kind of jumping into the MMA ring, give a 7-figure deal with Barstool after one fight. Like that is incredible. And that really shows kind of the superstar that Paddy is and what he brings to the table and what UFC has on their hands. And just to see him knock it out of the park again. And, it's not like he's fighting top 15 guys. He's very young. We're seeing what he is. And like he said, he's, pulling the Sugar Sean. if you guys aren't paying, if you're paying me, you know, this base contract rate where I'm not making all that much money, I'm not going to go fight these killers. I'll fight these guys all day long. But if you want me to fight the big boys, I need to get paid for it, which completely fair. You know, that's, I almost said that's what I would do if I was in the UFC, but I'm a fucking pansy. There's no way I'd ever be in the UFC. That's almost just comical just to look at. So then it comes out, Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker. And Dan Hooker is just one of the most fan-friendly fighters in the UFC. Everybody loves him. He usually fights at 55. He used to be at featherweight. One sec. I might have to pause this and go, okay, give me 3 seconds because this dog is going nuts. One sec. Dog? What the fuck? What's going on? You being tortured? Someone killing you? Why are you? What do you see? Oh, they're doing construction. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. They're building houses around and there's construction people out there. So she's not being tortured. Nobody's, you know, putting out their cigarettes on her back or anything. She just sees people outside and she's going nuts. So apologies. So Dan Hooker, just huge favorite. Everybody loves him. And he was dropping back down to featherweight and fighting Arnold Allen, who is a UK fighter. Was he undefeated? I'm not sure. He maybe has like 1 or 2 losses, but it's just probably the dark horse of the featherweight division, right? Like there's people that are closer to fighting for the title from the UK, but I don't know if any of them. Oh, hello. Oh, did you protect the house? Thank you. Oh, thank you, honey. Oh, thanks for protecting me. I feel so safe. So he's just a huge prospect, you know, co-main event. Like he's there for a reason, and he comes out. And they just go to war. You know, like I think everyone was kind of thinking like, oh, Arnold Allen might try and wrestle a little bit, but they just go throwing haymakers at each other. Like just this, almost the only thing that could have matched the intensity of Paddy Pimblett. Like again, how there was that Gunnar Nelson fight in between Molly and Paddy to calm it down. I don't know if Arnold Allen knew like, hey, this is what I got to do to get the shine or whatever it was, but him and Hooker just start going to war, and Allen catches him with a couple good ones, and Hooker's wobbly. He's on wobbly legs, and he's just going nuts, throwing hook, trying to put Hooker away. Yeah, Hook said Hooker. Too many hook words in this. He's just throwing punches at him, you know, left, right, trying to drop Dan Hooker and put him out. And in that crazy flurry, Dan is clearly on wobbly legs, but he's still throwing back, and he catches Arnold Allen and drops him to one knee. Right. So now they're both kind of wobbly and then they kind of reset, and it just, so this was all in the first round, but just for almost what time did we finish? 2:33. So for 2.5 minutes, it's just absolute carnage. Guys throwing it at each other. And I don't know how Dan Hooker didn't get knocked out. Like he was getting hit with some of the biggest bombs we've seen in the featherweight division and just eating them, like clearly being affected and wobbly. And eventually the ref stepped in, and again, like crowd nuts, bonkers, crazy. You can't even describe, like it is the crowd in London was like the biggest crowds in the US when they get hyped up for like a main event, like the biggest, craziest thing. It was like that all night. And building. And this was just like the penultimate moment right before the main event of just this card has gone almost, the UFC is just sitting in the back. Dana White is just, you know, counting his money, you know, rubbing his hands together because he realizes what a cultural impact that this night is. This is not just a great card. This is game changing to what UFC. There is going to be hundreds of fighters in Europe in 5-10 years from now that all point back to this card as the time they realize that this is what they want to do. They want to be a fighter. This is that kind of card. This is that impactful. And we hadn't even got to the main event. So then the main event is Tom Aspinall, who's a heavyweight UK guy, trains with Darren Till out of Calbon, and has looked in every one of his fights. I think he's had 4 fights in the UFC. I think he has combined like maybe like 8 minutes in the cage. He absolutely stops people in the first round. And this is his first fight against a real contender, against the number 5 guy in the world, Alexander Volkov, who's 6'7", long, rangy, experience, has been in tons of 5-round fights, has, you know, been in the deep waters, has come back, has lost, has won. He's seen everything. And this is also the first time that Aspinall fought in front of a crowd, because his 4 fights in the UFC have all been in the Apex. He's never fought in front of a crowd, not to mention a home crowd, 20,000 people, sold out O2 Arena. Like, so nobody really knew, you know, like I figured on paper all things held equal, Aspinall was probably a bit better skilled. A bit, I was saying, right? I didn't think it'd be what it was. But I thought, ooh, but how's he going to handle the pressure, the big lights, the big stage? And he just comes out and walks him. You could see from the first couple punches, Volkov almost like, what the hell? How is this guy so fast? He couldn't touch him. Was just piecing him up on the feet and then feeding right under, getting big takedowns. Volkov got back up, ate a few more punches, took him down again. Like, just absolutely beat his ass. Another first round finish for Aspinall. So now, not only did you have this amazing card where almost all of your UK fighters did well and really made names for themselves, and you built yourselves a whole bunch of stars if you're the UFC, but now this really big prospect that you're taking a huge gamble, giving him that kind of step up in competition, he walks through it. So now, I don't know, I would say Aspinall's one win away from a title shot. Like he could even fight for an interim belt here. It was just absolutely unbelievable how well everything worked out, and just what a star-studded event it was. They had the big names out. Eddie Hearn was there. Anthony Joshua was there. A bunch of UK celebrities. It was a big event. And I feel like because it wasn't a pay-per-view and because people weren't all that excited here, I feel like it almost got drowned out in the mainstream. But that is going to be one that at the end of the year, the UFC is going to hang their hat on that one. I think over a lot of the pay-per-views they're going to put on this year. That was a big event. And then, awesome post-fight press conferences because they had all those personalities. Molly she's fucking hammered. She was so she wanted to come out and watch Patty fight. That was a big deal. So Dana said, because they asked, the UFC said, well, Molly wants to go out. Can you? And Dana said, yeah, let her come sit with me. So she's drinking Hallerhead, which is Dana White's whiskey, out of the bottle, dancing with I think she grabbed one of Everton's, her football club, and she had the scarf on. She's drinking Hallerhead. That's why she jumped in the cage with Patty. She's hammered. Doing the post-fight pressers, Patty was on point. All these guys just knocked it out of the park 6 ways from Sunday. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So good. Yeah. Next weekend's card, not quite the same. I think if you're a degenerate like me, there's lots to be excited about. If you're more casual, you can miss it. Not that big a deal. All right, that's probably the end of the fight talk for anybody that's looking for the timestamp of when I can come in, and I'm going to be stopped talking about fighting. That was a lot more. I was just going to do a quick rundown, but I had to tell you guys how amazing it was and how much fun it was for me. And in between all that, while watching those fights, I also had the Oilers game on and watched them, put a mollywhopping on. Who did they play? Shit, who did the Oilers play yesterday? This is embarrassing. I'm going to have to look it up. I watched the game. Oh, the Devils. Right. Again, terrible reffing. And I know that every fucking person thinks that, the reffing's bad against their team, but almost got his helmet ripped off by his visor with a high stick. No call, right? Little baby high stick. We get it. All year I've been a little bit unimpressed with this reffing, but it's getting kind of fucking ridiculous. Anyway, off the sports. What else do I have to talk about other than sports? That's a good question. Some good podcasts I've been listening to. I kind of was listening to a lot more of my normal podcasts I listen to on Apple Podcasts, and then I only listen to podcasts on Spotify for Joe Rogan because they're a terrible podcast platform and it sucks ass, but it's the only place you can get Rogan, so I wasn't really listening to him as much, and I was behind. I had I think 3 episodes I hadn't seen of Joe Rogan, so I also was catching up on that. And a guy he had on, he had this guy is called Sadhguru, and apparently he's really big on Instagram. I just followed him, but apparently lots of people love him, and he's this yogi from India, and he is special. Wow. Where do I even start? Just his story and how he changes people and how he's grown to be where he is, and the things that he's taking on now, and at whatever age he is, he looks, I don't know, he's got a big old white beard and, looks like a traditional yoga. Looks like he's 600 years old. I have no idea. Did I say he looks like a traditional yoga? Looks like a traditional yogi. That's what I meant. But just, if you need a pick-me-up, if you need someone to kind of set you straight and just give you a little bit of guidance, that is a great episode to listen to. I really enjoyed what he had to say and just kind of was exactly what I needed at that time. It was awesome. I almost want to, get back into yoga and turned my whole life around just listening to talk. It was amazing. And then another episode was Daryl Davis, who's one of my favorite people in the whole world. He's this jazz musician who grew up overseas and didn't really get to see racism. He's a black gentleman, and he came back to America, and he just couldn't understand as a kid, like, why do people not like me and not even know me? Like, the concept of racism was so foreign to him that he just always had it in his head of like, I want to understand this. And over, the course of his music career, he ended up talking to somebody in the Ku Klux Klan, and through just conversation had him, reform, give him his robes, and, leave the Klan, which was amazing. And then he started doing this more people, and he is, just through nothing but conversation and listening alone has converted, hundreds and hundreds of Nazis and Ku Klux Klan members away. He's just an amazing, amazing individual, and he's so smart and so kind. And I always enjoy it. Every time I see Daryl Davis pop up on one of my podcasts, I'm always excited because I really love what he does and what he stands for and all these different things. So he was on, and he was on with this other guy that the name kind of seemed familiar, but I didn't really know who he was. But he is this guy who's starting a social media site called Minds, which is completely open source. So all the algorithms, all the algorithms that are running behind it and showing what they're, pushing to the top and pulling down, what they're shadow banning, like, you don't get to see any of that with Instagram, Facebook, all the traditional ones. And what they're trying to do is build one where that is all completely upfront, and it's all built on the blockchain. It's completely transparent. It's an amazing idea. And Daryl Davis is, being part of it. He sees the value in it. And I was almost confused. Like, why is Daryl Davis on with this guy? Like, they don't, at first it was like, how are they going to tie this all back together? But then they ended up doing it. And, Daryl Davis was able to speak towards what it is, but I'm really excited about it. I actually downloaded the app. I haven't gone through all the stuff, and I'm going to try and do it. I might try and you can post video and stuff too. So I was thinking maybe it'd be a cool place to post the podcast. And, it's everything that I want. And they kind of spoke to this a little bit, but this is where I see the real power of it is I don't think that Minds is going to, take over Instagram and Facebook, as the top dog, at least not anytime soon. I don't think that's reasonable, but I think to build a precedent that open source can work, and to build a hunger for people to say, no, Instagram, this is what we want out of you. If you just keep lying to us and keeping your algorithms, and I'd say Instagram, it's all Facebook, hey, Facebook, if you don't be open about what you're trying to do to society just to make money, we're not gonna have it. And to force that into their already existing platforms, I think that's the real change. And I think Minds is the first step in that. And that was exciting. And then what was the other one I listened to? Oh, I'm almost finished it. Once again, it's always interesting to hear Mike Baker. Mike Baker was not exactly what his position at the CIA was, but it was quite high up, and he worked in the CIA for a long time, and now he's been on Joe Rogan 3 or 4 times, and it's always interesting to hear from kind of the horse's mouth how things work in the world. And they go on, they break down Putin and the Ukraine and a lot of this stuff. And for so many people that it's so hard to turn right now, there's so much bullshit and propaganda, and you're not ever really getting the full picture of what this is kind of anywhere you turn. This is one of those ones where it's impossible to get the full picture, but the actors, and their blind spots and kind of their beliefs. And within that, you can really get a much clearer idea than you can through any sort of news outlet. They're always going to have a spin. And so will these 2 individuals. But when you know the individuals, you can discount for that. It's hard to discount for all the different, what's the word? Forces, I guess, pulling on, all the different advertisers, all the different people behind the scenes, all the different corporate ownership stakes in these news media. You're never going to be able to see all that. So you're getting spin, but you're just not exactly sure who's spin, and what percentage are these people and all these different actors that are in there. Whereas with just 2 people, there's nothing more than that. It's Joe and Mike, and you can do that math for yourself. It's amazing, and I've been really enjoying it. Yeah, those are kind of the podcasts that I listen to. There's some really great Jordan Peterson podcasts that have been out lately, of him kind of breaking down, what did he call them? I don't know. There's been some good ones. They're always good. Check him out too. I'm losing steam. I got to wrap this thing up. What? And the dog's barking again. Who knows? Maybe there's some more people working out there, but Other than that, if you guys could do all those things I talk about in the intro and outro of every podcast ever, share the episodes, subscribe, tell a friend. That really helps. Always appreciate it. Other than that, just have a great week. And I will hopefully get one of these interview ones done and maybe even release a second episode if I can get a couple recorded this week, as long as I have one saved for Monday. I'll maybe try and get another one out to you guys this week, because I was hoping to have an interview episode for you guys today, but stuff happened. Had to call an audible, had to do this little solo episode. Didn't know what I was going to talk about. Didn't think I was going to talk about fucking esports for 20 minutes. That was wild. And then, was thinking, just a quick little brief rundown of the UFC that ended up taking another 20 minutes, but oh well. I enjoyed it. I had fun. I hope you guys did too. Other than that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.